Hi, everybody. Dr. Patricia Coughlin again, talking to you about ways to get a whole lot better at what you do as a psychotherapist. So, as you know, I think a lot about this, I read a lot about this, and I just wanted to post a quick video about how important it is to be improvisational in your interventions and responses to patients. As much as we need to study theory and technique and practice certain skills, we have to use those flexibly and creatively. And if you think about it, any conversation, and certainly any psychotherapy session, is improv, right? You're never going to have the same conversation twice. So, what are some of the rules of improv that we can use in our work with patients? Well, one of the first and most vital to improv is the rule, if you can call it that, that you can't say no. You can't block or reject someone's bid for connection. It always has to be yes and, no matter how outlandish the person's statement might be. Now, in ISTDP, which is the treatment that I practice and that I write about and teach about, we focus a lot on acquainting patients with their defenses and how excessive reliance on defenses actually cause and perpetuate their symptoms and suffering. So we try to motivate people to give those up. And we really want to make sure that the person can distinguish their true wishes and feelings and impulses from the defenses against them. So very often, when trainees are first learning how to identify and clarify defenses and help patients give them up, they'll frequently say, no, that's not a feeling. You might say, well, how do you feel towards your husband when you found out he lied to you? And they say, well, I feel that was, really bad, on his part. I thought it was really cowardly. And so often therapists will say, no, that's not a feeling, it's a thought. And the no, right, really can have an effect of actually contributing to defense and resistance. So even though it might seem semantic, to be able to say, yeah, those are your thoughts about your husband, right? But what kind of feelings do you have toward him, and what kind of feelings do you have toward him, right? So the yes and going with, it's kind of like that other video I made about the verbal Aikido. I hadn't realized it at the time, but in a way, this fellow who came across in a quite hostile and provocative manner, I just went with it. Yeah, of course you have those kinds of, feelings and attitudes. So let's see what we can do together since we're here. So going with saying yes and you can practice this in your own life. In fact, I had an interesting example of that with a colleague whose daughter was afraid of the dark and thought that there was a monster under her bed. And the mother was always tempted to say, oh, honey, there's no monster under the bed. Don't worry about it and this sort of thing. But when I was encouraging people just to practice this wherever they could, not just in sessions, she decided to go with it. She said, oh, really? There's a monster under your bed? Let's go see. And they went together and they had this fun adventure, and the anxiety was dispelled. And if you think about some of the most powerful speeches, for example, in the world, you might know about the I've Got a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. And this really exemplifies the second rule for improv that is just so important it can't be underestimated. And that is to listen. Actually, to listen to what the other person is saying. Listen for the opening. Listen for the opportunity to respond to. So often we get preoccupied with crafting our response that we really don't listen. I see this all the time with my trainees. They do not listen to patients, and they're missing all these golden opportunities. And so in this I Have a Dream speech, which has become so famous, it turns out that was improv. He had no time really to prepare for this speech, and he was someone who tended to really prepare very diligently. It would typically take him 12 to 15 hours to prepare a Sunday sermon. And so he was called upon to give this speech after Rosa Parks had been arrested for sitting next to a white man on a bus. And so he was furiously jotting down ideas and trying to get clear ahead of time about what he was going to say. But it was very loose, and so he started to talk and speak, and then he thought, well, I better listen to the crowd's response to kind of give him clues about what was landing, what was resonating, and what wasn't. But the trigger to the I Have a Dream was actually Mahalia Jackson. She was a famous gospel singer, a good friend of Martin Luther King's, and someone, with whom he had deep conversations. And so he was fumbling a little bit, and then she called out, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." But he was open to listening. He heard it, and he went with it. I have a dream today, right? And we all know what happened after that. I also think about the extraordinary speech that Robert Kennedy gave the night that Martin Luther King was shot down and assassinated. He was down south, and he was going to give a speech, and everyone told him, "Don't go. You have to cancel it. There's going to be a riot. People are going to be so upset, and they're certainly not going to want to listen to a white man." Well, he refused to cancel it, and he went. And he just spoke from his heart. And he connected with this group. First of all, he told them what had happened. Many didn't know, and you could hear the gasps in the audience. But he immediately followed with, "I know what this feels like. My brother was gunned down. My brother was assassinated. And I know how tempting it is, right, to get into anger and retribution." And anyway, not only there was no riot there was no riot in the entire city, whereas many other cities throughout the country erupted into this kind of anger because he spoke from the heart. He connected. He said, "Yes, I hear you, and I can understand." So I really encourage you to think about these issues and to improv. Yes, and really listen. Listen for the openings, and then riff off what the what your patient is saying. Speaking of riffs, Miles Davis, who, his album, Some Kind of Blue, is the largest selling jazz album ever. It was recorded in a matter of hours. Again, it was totally improv. So this is a very powerful, these are powerful tools, and yet, of course, they're really only effective with a trained and tuned instrument. So it's not like you can just wing it and, not be thinking about your patient and developing your skills and knowledge. You have to do that too, right? But then to add this note of improv in your actual interactions. And again, try it, practice, and not only with your patients, but also in life. So it's great talking to you, and I haven't made a video for a while, and I'm going to really make it a point to make like one a week. So you'll be hearing from me more regularly. Okay, and if you're interested, you can also visit my website, istdpnortheast.com. Hope to see you there. Bye-bye.